Zulfi Bhutto of Pakistan. His Life and Times by Stanley Wolpert. Chapter 7. Winters of His Discontent. 1965 to 1969. Ayub saw that his days in power were numbered. He could speak nowhere in public without getting shot at or causing a riot. Nor had his once robust health returned. Still, he had the army, and though it might not be powerful enough to beat India, its strength was more than sufficient to quell street disturbances and political opposition. But none of the heads of the three top services, Army General Yahya Khan, Navy Admiral S.M. Ehsan, and Air Marshal Noor Khan, was willing to order troops to fire on civilians, advising instead negotiated settlements. Former Air Marshal Muhammad Asghar Khan entered the political fray in Lahore on 17 November 1968, announcing his support for the people's rights to the press on that day and thereafter addressing bar association meetings throughout the West, calling for the restoration of democratic rights and freedoms. His sober and prestigious voice had, as he later put it, an electrifying effect on the public mind. Zulfi was released from prison during the second week of February 1969 and returned to Larkana, where he was to remain under house arrest inside his Al Murtaza compound. And Ayub accepted the unanimous advice of his three chiefs and agreed to call a roundtable conference of political leaders from the East as well as the West to attempt to resolve what had by now become a virtual state of undeclared civil war against his regime, reducing Pakistan's economy to a shambles. At about this time, the Democratic Action Committee was formed. It included the conservative Jamaat-e-Islami and Nizam-e-Islam religious parties from the West, and Mujib's Awami League as well as Bhashani's more radical National Awami Party of the East. The committee agreed to talk with Ayub about the future of Pakistan's constitution and the upcoming elections, but only after he lifted his state of emergency with its invidious defense of Pakistan rules. For much of January, rioting bloodied the streets of Dhaka, Karachi, Lahore, and Pindi as police continued to battle students and striking workers stationed behind bus and rickshaw barricades. Ayub broadcast a personal appeal to parents and teachers, asking them to use their influence to help restore calm and peaceful order to Pakistan's streets. But the students kept shouting, Ayub must go, and hurling brickbats as well as fireballs at police, whose ammunition was live. On 14th February, Zulfi announced in Al Murtaza that he, Mustafa Khar, Mubashir Hassan, and several other Pakistan People's Party stalwarts would fast until death to effect the lifting of Ayub's draconian martial laws. It was the only time Zulfi ever followed in the footsteps of Mahatma Gandhi. Yet, his announced fast appealed to many of his humblest devout Muslim followers as proof positive of his saintly Sufi powers, his willingness to sacrifice his life for the people and for Pakistan. The timing was excellent. 3 days later, Ayub ended the state of emergency, releasing Bhutto and his leading lieutenants from detention. All of Larkana turned out to celebrate, as did most of Sindh, indeed, most of West Pakistan, for Wali Khan was released on the same day from his frontier prison. G.A. Bhutto, long live Bhutto, filed the air above Sindh. Zulfi was hailed both as Qaid-e-Awam and Shaheed, having risked his all, hurling shots from his sling at the giant, bringing down the longest lasting, once seemingly strongest dictator of them all. Ayub hoped to continue at least nominally in control. by releasing Mujib as well as Bhutto and inviting them both to a roundtable conference with all the political leaders of note. Ayub seems to have imagined that he might retain his much diminished presidency a bit longer. Zulfi would have none of it. He did not accept the invitation to meet with Ayub or any of the others, launching his own final campaign for the presidency of Karachi a few days after his release. We will take a bullet on our chest, but we will bring a revolution, promised their Qaid-e-Awam to his adoring Sindhis. Give us bread and clothing, otherwise vacate the chair, he shouted at Ayub. Hundreds of thousands roared back, G.A. Bhutto. On 21st February, Ayub announced his decision to remove himself from the campaign for re-election. The very next day, the government dropped its charges against Mujib, who was released from jail and found an ocean of Bengalis waiting for him in Dhaka. There were many more Bengalis than Sindhis, of course, and Mujib was as popular among his people as Zulfi was in Sindh and most of Punjab. Shortly after his release, Mujib agreed to attend Ayub's conference, held in Pindi from 10th to 12th March. Bhutto and Bhashani both boycotted that meeting, however, and though Wali Khan of the Frontier National Awami Party was there, as were other less popular Westerner leaders, nothing was achieved. Strikes and student violence proliferated everywhere. The cities were unsafe and political murder was not unusual. By late March, conservative leaders of the West accused Bhutto and Bhashani of leading Pakistan into anarchy. On 25th March 1969, Ayub stepped down. I cannot preside over the destruction of my country. He handed his powers over to General Agha Muhammad Yahya Khan, who immediately proclaimed martial law throughout Pakistan and assumed the title Chief Martial Law Administrator in addition to those of President and Army Commander-in-Chief. Yahya Khan announced his resolve to preside over the smooth transfer of power to representatives of the people, elected freely and impartially on the basis of adult franchise. He asserted that he had no ambition to retain power, but Asghar Khan, who knew Yahya well, immediately condemned this betrayal of democracy, insisting that the little general was, in fact, a highly ambitious person. Zulfi also knew Yahya, who had hunted with him in Larkana and drunk with him before and after each shooting. Yahya's principal staff officer, moreover, Major General, late Lieutenant General S.G.M. Pirzada, was a boon drinking companion of both men, but a heart attack in 1964 had forced him to become more temperate than either. Until his heart attack, Pirzada had served Ayub as military secretary, the most important and powerful secretarial post in Pakistan. The military secretary organized the president's daily calendar, deciding with whom he should meet, when, and usually for how long, attending most meetings himself, thereby acquiring detailed information and an understanding of the president's mind better than any ministers or other high officials. A clever military secretary could become almost as powerful as the president he served, were he so inclined. Pirzada was a man of sharp intellect and political ambition, self-effacing, patient, able to achieve under a less than sagacious Yahya Khan the position of a singular influence and power he had aspired to but was obliged to resign from by Ayub Khan at the first sign of his physical frailty. Pirzada could never forget his ouster from the Eden of Ayub's president house. And after Zulfi Bhutto was also sacked in 1966, he and Pirzada developed a close friendship based on their common animosity towards Ayub, as C.W. Chaudhry accurately observed. Pirzada and Zulfi saw eye to eye in their negative assessments of Ayub, and Zulfi hoped to use Pirzada as his swiftest access to the top of Pakistan's martial pole of power. There were, after all, several cases still pending against him in the various courts of law, for though Ayub had stepped down, his lower minions lingered on in Sindh's provincial offices as well as at the head of the district police of Larkana and now Daro. In mid May 1969, Zulfi wrote Larkana's superintendent of police, Raja Sarwar Khan, to complain about his deputy, one Mr. Qadri, whom he viewed as the chief instrument of Ayub's harassment against himself as the former president's principal target. Mr. Qadri committed every wrong in order to fulfill the task assigned to him. Among other devices, he picked up 2 or 3 notorious gundas from my hometown, Naudaro, and coaxed them to cause me and my people as much irritation and annoyance as possible. Siyasat. But the same post, Zulfi also wrote Colonel Dost Muhammad, then martial law administrator for Sindh's Khairpur division, informing him of the kind of trouble and harassment that the police continue to give us in Larkana. Though he pointedly added, I know that this is not the policy of the present regime, but these officials are bent upon creating friction. Zulfi sent Mumtaz Bhutto personally to explain in greater detail what he found intolerable about Qadri's misbehavior. 2 days later, after meeting with Mumtaz, the colonel replied, I will carry out investigation myself and make sure that no victimization of any sort takes place. Zulfi was thankful for the colonel's interest in keeping close watch over Qadri, adding, not that I am bothered by the malicious activities of such individuals, but I merely wanted to draw your attention to the continuing mischief of Mr. Qadri, only because I believe that times have changed and that the present administration does not intend to continue the policy of the former regime in this particular connection. He was quite right. Pirzada had promised him as much, and Pirzada's word now was the law. Bureaucratic underlings, however, knew how ephemeral orders issued from the top of Pakistan's central government generally proved to be. Even military leaders were quick to displace one another. Zulfi found many thorns and sharp stones strewn in his path on every back road he or his new party traversed, even in Larkana. Deputy Commissioner Masood Mufti had the temerity to write him in early August of 1969 to draw your attention to martial law rule number 21, which forbids holding of public meetings and processions of a political nature. Members of the People's Party had committed a breach of that regulation during your journey from Mohenjo-daro to Larkana. Zulfi was informed and ordered to please direct the members of his People's Party to desist from such displays in future. It was intolerable to Zulfi to be nattered at this way by men who, whatever their titles might be, were little more than fleas to his ego. He replied to Mr. Mufti in Larkana and sent a copy to Pirzada in Pindi. I am not a drawing room politician. Whenever I travel in this country and wherever I halt, people are bound to assemble to meet me. If the car in which I sit is preceded or followed by other motor cars carrying friends and party members happening to go to the same way, you call that a procession? I'm not the former president of Pakistan to need weapons to protect me from the affection of people. You surely cannot expect me to rebuke my friends, my party members, and the thousands of sympathizers and rudely tell them that they are not wanted, that they should not have waited for hours in the sweltering heat to meet me. I care for the people of Pakistan, for the humble folk whom the administration, grown callous by years of unchecked power, has been trampling underfoot. In marked contrast to his own modest and restrained political activity, Mujibur Rahman strides across the land of East Pakistan as a mighty colossus preaching his hymn of hate without let or hindrance. The growing popularity of Mujib's Awami League, with its 6 points demanding virtual autonomy for Pakistan's Bangladesh wing, was now viewed by Zulfi as a treacherous threat and challenge to Pakistan's integrity. General Yahya and Pirzada saw Mujib and his party in much the same Western light, leading Bengali separatist forces that will strike at the roots of national unity. The aims of my party, the nature of my struggle, are to be found in the attainment of fundamental principles involving freedom, national sovereignty, and not based on irrelevant matters having no bearing on the nation's future. This would not be the last time Zulfi Bhutto was careful to point out to Yahya through Pirzada his own position and that of his party in contrast to Mujib and his. Do not think that Mujibur Rahman alone commands influence and is able to attract attention and get warm ovations, and that for this reason he should be treated exceptionally. Let me tell you, Mr. Deputy Commissioner, that this state of affairs cannot continue. Zulfi warned Mufti. Here, indeed, Zulfi was quite right, but unfortunately, he would soon forget the wisdom of his cogent analysis in later desperate attempts to shore up his own collapsing regime's support. He contemptuously dismissed the leaders of all other parties in the West as either too weak or vacillating, labeling the PDP a collection of uninspiring fossils. Turning to the major parties of the East, Zulfi castigated Bhashani's National Awami Party as oriented to either Moscow or Peking and charged that Mujib's Awami League wants the dismemberment of Pakistan. Zulfi insisted that his People's Party was the only national party in the country that inspires the confidence of the people and is both dynamic and vigorous enough to meet the test of our times. A blow to this party is a blow to national solidarity, he cautioned. We are patriots. We have served Pakistan courageously and have won the affection and esteem of the people. We do not want to create problems. Trouble this time would mean the end of Pakistan. We want to cooperate in the task of overcoming the constitutional dilemma, but cooperation cannot be one sided. We do not seek any privileges. All we expect is to be left alone to organize our party and to prepare for the future. Whatever the circumstances, I cannot fail my people. Please do not suffer from the complex of power. Do not repeat the mistakes that were committed not so long ago by a despot, the like of whom Pakistan will not see again. The situation is brittle. It is fragile indeed. It is delicate. If another crisis erupts in the near future, take it from me that this time you will find Pakistan in two or more pieces. I believe that I am among the few who have the capability and conviction to hold this country together and to make it march to progress and glory. I played with my life and risked death to free the people for the better Pakistan. The passionate closing section of the letter to the Deputy Commissioner of Larkana reveals much about Zulfi Bhutto's complex mind and the motivation underlying most of his major decisions during the next decade. He considered himself not only a Pakistani patriot, but the one leader truly capable of saving his country and its people from impending disaster. He believed it was his destiny to do both. Zulfi thought he best understood his people's passions, their insatiable thirst for democracy, too powerful for any dike to restrain. He alone could hold back or unleash those torrents, turning them on or off whenever he could or whenever he chose with his mighty rhetorical powers. He had done it in Lahore, in Pindi, in Karachi, in Larkana, even in remote villages all along the frontier. Whatever the circumstances, I cannot fail my people. He wrote literally meaning it, believing himself infallible, endowed with destiny's mantle for unique greatness and power, and for suffering and sacrifice as well, potential martyr that he was. Please do not suffer from the complex of power. Zulfi wisely cautioned Masood Mufti, who might well have responded, Physician, heal thyself. He really believed in whatever he said, Husna recalled, because he was very intense. If he said something, he believed in it, even if he didn't start off by believing in it. He was like that, very single minded, very intense, and very total about everything. He was human, of course, made mistakes, and he admitted them to me. In fact, he would always laugh and say, You never let me get away with it, do you? I became sort of his conscience, bare, naked, the naked truth.